Hi, I'm Paul, the Happy Gilder. Welcome to my channel. In this video, I'm going to be creating a kind of antique effect mirror using just spray paint and some household items. But before I crack on with that, if you're a fan of Victorian techniques, gold leaf, sign painting, reverse glass, digital processes and much more, then you're in the right place because that's all this channel's about. And I try to release a video every week. Also, if you'd like to support the channel, I've put a link to my Patreon in the description. I reward my patrons every month with a different vector design. There's also a link to my Etsy shop, my Instagram and the Happy Gilder Facebook group where we're all kind of helping each other out and sharing ideas. Anyway, that out of the way, let's crack on with the vid. Right, so I've cut a design into this piece of vinyl, not that you'll be able to see it yet, and I've covered this process quite a few times, so I'll put a link to those videos up here if this is your first time on the channel and sort of wondering how I've got to this point. But all I'm going to do is apply this vinyl to the back of this piece of glass, and the glass has been cleaned thoroughly, and once the vinyl's applied and I start picking the stencil away, I don't want to be touching this glass at all because it's going to be quite difficult to clean if I do get marks on it because of the sort of remaining vinyl on it. It'll make it kind of impossible to kind of give it a good scrub. And that's it really. So I'll do the application of the vinyl in the time lapse and then we'll jump outside and get started. Okay, so everything on the glass is prepped, and if you haven't got a vinyl cutter and want to kind of do a design yourself, that's not a restriction. You know, the vinyl itself is quite cheap. I'll put a link to where I get it from in the description, but you could hand cut a design. There's also companies online where you could send your design off and they'll send you back a sort of sticker that you could use. So this certainly isn't restricted by not having a vinyl cutter. Anyway, moving on to the next phase. Going to need a couple of things. Firstly, some white vinegar. Now, any vinegar will work, but if you use pickling vinegar or chip shop vinegar, it's just going to stink. So white vinegar is the way to go. And I'm going to dilute this 1 part vinegar to 2 parts water and just have it in a bowl. I'm not going to need a lot because it's a tiny little panel. And then the other thing is, this is Krylon looking glass. Now, it depends where you are as to whether or not this is the best thing to get. I've got this left over from a previous video, but it's really, really expensive in the UK. I think it costs about £20 a tin, but the equivalent product is something called Rust-Oleum Mirror Effect Spray Paint, and that's really good. I think you can get that for about £7 a tin in the UK, but in the US, I think Krylon is pretty cheap. Anyway, I'm going to go outside because this is pretty toxic stuff, so I want to sort of do this in a well-ventilated area. So let's go. We're ready to go now. Apologies if you keep hearing gunfire. I live in the country and it's Sunday and there's people shooting in the field behind my house. One thing I forgot to mention is you need a soft cloth, and the reason for this is because you're going to be blotting this, and if you use anything that's got any sort of texture, like sort of kitchen roll, you'll end up with that texture on your glass. So something that's pretty, you know, microfiber or an old t-shirt or something like that. The reason I've got this in a bowl is I don't want to spray it because I don't want a misty kind of effect. You going to help me with this? No. I want to kind of dip my fingers in it and just splash it. So I don't think there's much you can do wrong with this, you know, it's a random effect. So, you know, it's just going to be different each time. So I'm just going to dip my fingers in that. It's quite difficult to see. I think I'm just going to move these so that I can actually see where that's going. A little bit on there. I think go some more around the edges. That's probably a bit too much. Another thing which is quite common with these is they tend to be a bit more done around the edges, you know. So let's have a look. I'm going to go with that. Right. You apply this in really thin coats and it goes on quite matte, but as it sort of dries you'll see that will become reflective, but much more reflective on the other side of the glass. So I'm just going to wait for that to dry, and it normally takes 60 seconds between each application, and then I'm just going to use this to kind of blot the sort of droplets. That's alright, so I'll just dab that here. I'll just start dabbing around where those droplets are. And I'm gonna go more than that. I'm gonna really start splashing that on. Go for a heavy antique. Dabbing away at that. Right, and I'm just going to apply a few more coats of this and then dab it at the end, and then we'll come back to the next stage. Okay, so that's the final coat of Krylon and the last dab. Because of that, you've got a kind of certain areas of this that are a bit more see-through than others, which you can, I mean, it looks pretty nice as is, but I think it'll look nicer once it's backed up with black. So what I'm going to do now is just use some black spray paint to cover it all. And that should sort of darken up some of those spots that are slightly more see-through, because the last dab I did, I haven't sprayed anything after that, so some of these bigger spots will be, yeah, a little bit more transparent. So right, so here's where we're at with it so far, and you could happily just finish here because I think that looks really nice, but because that vinyl's on there and there's a potential of doing a bit more to it, you know, I think I'm just going to take that off and then gild that sort of blank area. Now, I've done a lot of gilding tutorials, so if that's something you're interested in and aren't familiar with the stuff I've done, I'll put a link to those up here. So I'll do the rest as a time lapse and then have a look at what that looks like afterwards. And this is how that's come out. Now, I don't know about you, but I think that looks pretty authentic. And especially considering it's done with, you know, household items and a can of spray paint. Now, the spray paint isn't cheap, but the alternative is more expensive, which is either doing it with kind of silver leaf and tarnishing that, or buying kind of pre-antiqued but new mirrors. Now, I've looked at these in the past, and they are extremely expensive. You're talking £100 for a square metre of antique mirror. So I'd certainly prefer to go with this method. And also, you know, you've got a lot more versatility on what you can do with the glass. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you did, please subscribe to the channel and click the little thumbs up icon. And please share it with anyone else who you think might enjoy it. So till next time, cheers.